On May 24, around 5:30 in the morning, a group of unmarked cars arrived at Laura Lopes's peaceful Wiltshire rural house. No sirens were blasting, no blue lights were blinking, and there were no prior warnings. A high court enforcement team with a ministerial-level search warrant, a legal document supported by the supreme authority of the British state, rolled out onto the gravel road. Two fabled, long-lost relics that belonged to Princess Diana were found in a matter of hours. The power structure at the very top of the British monarchy was permanently changed, and Queen Camilla's daughter's entire financial fortune was frozen. This was neither a family argument resolved over afternoon tea, nor was it a terrible miscommunication. Prince William was the mastermind behind this cold, calculating, military-style execution. William destroyed Queen Camilla's private financial networks, trapped his own father, forced King Charles into a constitutional dead end, and used the nation's highest courts as weapons to recover his mother's stolen heritage in a single, brutal series of actions. However, the discovery of those two missing artifacts at the end of the High Court audit revealed something far more horrifying. The royal household was completely helpless to stop a covert, multi-million-dollar offshore paper trail that led right over the Atlantic and indicated a shadow operation. You must return to a quiet chamber within Kensington Palace, a few weeks before the Wiltshire attack, to comprehend the extraordinary speed with which William struck. Beneath ordinary business correspondence, it arrived without any fuss. A series of standard, high-resolution catalog photographs came onto the screen while an administrative staff member was looking through Sotheby's incoming auction paperwork. The photos were made for a private evaluation, registered under a civilian identity, and not specifically marked. To the uneducated eye, they seemed to be just two exquisite pieces of unidentified vintage jewelry. A geometric sapphire bracelet made with unquestionable 20th century beauty and a rare black diamond pendant set on an elaborate chain. The employee failed to store the paperwork. They failed to provide a standard evaluation response. They went cold. They weren't anonymous articles. In the mid-1990s, they were pictured around Princess Diana's wrist and neck. They were associated with a heritage that shaped contemporary British history and lived in secret palace registries. Most importantly, these were objects that had disappeared from the public eye over 20 years ago and that were never, ever intended to be listed in a commercial auction catalog. The civilian daughter of Queen Camilla, Laura Lopes, was listed as the owner of the catalog entry. The legal process was straightforward, because they were submitted under a private name outside the Crown Estate Registry. It would remove the royal pedigree, covertly create a record of civilian ownership, and enable the treasures to be sold into private foreign collections where they would never be found again. Prince William remained silent when the picture was shown to him immediately. He did not give his dad a call. He didn't make contact with Camilla's family, and he didn't give a subtle, elegant way out. Rather, William made direct contact with Farrer and Company, the prestigious legal company that deals with the most deadly legal issues involving the royal family. Investigating was not instructed. It was going to be carried out. William saw right away what Camilla's group was trying to do. He had already set up the trap to ruin his mother's personal riches, which was being absorbed in a stealthy, administrative manner. Weeks before the Sotheby's catalog appeared, William had already started the first stage of this conflict, which Camilla's family was unaware of. William made a financial move in early May that shocked the royal estate's finance managers. He removed almost £500 million straight from active markets by liquidating 20% of the Duchy of Cornwall's commercial real estate holdings in a single, broad transaction. The official statement, which cited community investments, green development, and local housing programs, appeared to be well-written and PR-friendly. However, royal estate administrators knew exactly what William had done behind closed doors. A sophisticated web of private funds, civilian neighboring trusts, and gray market financial instruments has been subtly functioning on the periphery of the royal estate infrastructure for more than 20 years. These procedures, which directed subtle financial benefits and asset management rights straight toward Camilla's family and close friends, had been built so slowly that external auditors were completely unaware of them. William did not ask for a committee review or conduct an audit of these monies. All he did was defund them overnight. He destroyed the liquidity underpinning Camilla's private financial arrangements by removing £500 million from those particular business entities. He was cautioned by senior advisors that this would be seen as an outright declaration of war on the king's wife by Clarence House. William gave a chilly reply. The Duchy of Cornwall serves the British public and the direct line of succession, not covert private civilian interests. William was already in the second, far riskier stage of his plan, dealing with a 26-year-old lie that had plagued him since he was a child. When Camilla's financial managers learned their shadow network had been destroyed, the year 2000 is when this conflict's bitter core was formed. At the age of 17, William was coping with the overwhelming, debilitating sadness of losing his mother 3 years prior. The little prince noticed his mother wearing the sapphire bracelet and the black diamond pendant while looking through family photos. He inquired as to where they were being stored, realizing that they were extremely sentimental and personal objects. The 17-year-old was treated with measured tenderness by the adults in the room. He received assurances that the parts were safe, that they were kept in a special, secure vault at Highgrove, and that they would only be kept for him and his future family. It was a complete fiction. The jewelry was purposefully kept out of the official Crown Estate register and put within a Highgrove vault. These precious antiques were kept in a purposeful administrative shadow by not being included in the official inventory. They were not officially tracked, cataloged, or listed. They remained totally undetectable for 26 years, enabling anyone with access to the Highgrove estate to regard the vault as a private, unmonitored store, rather than as a revered royal trust. When the Sotheby's picture came to light in 2026, William realized the truth. As a devastated adolescent, the promise had been violated. They hadn't been forgotten or lost. Under the guise of a civilian name, they were being methodically readied for private liquidation. However, the young man who had been subdued in 2000 was now the heir apparent to the British throne, the Prince of Wales, and the commander of the Duchy of Cornwall. He also had the legal right to destroy anyone who got in his path. William drove to Sandringham personally, rather than making a public statement or participating in administrative back and forth. No emissary was sent by him. He entered the mansion with just one bulky leather binder. Employees on the estate's outskirts that day reported a complete oppressive silence. A scary legal document created by Ferrer and Company, a draft letters patent for asset reclassification based on constitutional precedent, was contained within the binder. A harsh, clear structure was outlined in the paper. It said that the heir apparent has the right to petition the Privy Council directly if the current monarch failed to safeguard historical royal assets because of weak executive administration or personal conflicts of interest. That paper contained a seismic danger. Under those particular circumstances, petitioning the Privy Council would essentially start a constitutional process that would place William as Prince Regent over the Crown's private property, deprive King Charles of his executive authority over those assets, and compel a public constitutional review of the monarchy's estate management. In front of his father, William set the binder down on the table. He made no grandiose remarks and showed no signs of rage. He only offered the king two options. First, all of Princess Diana's jewels might be reclassified as crown property held only for the direct line of succession, fully out of the reach of Queen Camilla, her children, and her estate, by an executive royal decree that Charles could sign right away. Second, if he declined, William would submit the letters patent to the Privy Council by the end of the week, making the administration of the royal vaults an official public constitutional record. Unquestionably, that was a valid checkmate. King Charles had to decide whether to uphold his own rule's executive authority or defend his wife's civilian daughter. The edict was signed by the king once he took up the pen. Diana's legacy was permanently shielded from Camilla's circle by a single stroke of ink. However, William saw a royal signature as just the legal permission he required to fully utilize the might of the British legal system. Ferrer and Company submitted an urgent plea to the High Court within hours of the king issuing the directive. They didn't ask for a civil summons. They asked for a Mareva injunction, which is the harshest, most aggressive financial tool permitted by British law. There is no negotiation in a Mareva injunction. It doesn't give courteous cautions. To stop property from disappearing, it immediately freezes all of the identified person's assets, accounts, and financial structures. All of London's main financial networks, including Barclays and Coutts, received immediate broadcast notifications. All of Laura Lopes's liquid assets, investment trusts, and private bank accounts were instantly frozen solid. She couldn't transfer money, shift money, or access private interests since she was legally immobilized. the physical enforcement followed. The search warrant was carried out at Laura Lopes's Wiltshire residence at 5:30 a.m. on May 24 by High Court enforcement officers and legal representatives. The estate underwent a methodical examination, documentation, and search. The black person was formally captured after being logged into federal evidence. Concurrently, the High Court issued unwavering confidentiality restrictions to Williams' legal team, imposing a stringent legal gag order on the facts of the search. The legal barrier put up by Kensington Palace made sure that Camilla's team could not utilize the media to influence the narrative, even when international financial newspapers like Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal started to notice large, unexpected account freezes connected to prominent British personalities. The High Court categorically rejected Camilla's personal attorney's desperate attempt to use sovereign immunity to protect her daughter. Only the current king and, in some situations, the queen consort are protected by sovereign immunity. It provides civilian relatives who own contested property with little legal protection. Laura Lopes was regarded as a private individual in possession of stolen crown property within the legal framework William had created, rather than as a protected member of the royal family. Queen Camilla's title and royal status had not been her biggest asset for more than 20 years. It had been her master lesson in handling the silent press. She had meticulously built contacts with key editors, media executives, and royal journalists in the British press since the 1990s. She was skilled at disclosing minute information, influencing public opinion, and subtly dispelling rumors that endangered her reputation. William completely removed the firearm from her grasp on the morning of the Wiltshire invasion. William put the Buckingham Palace press office on complete communication lockdown by initiating emergency institutional procedures. No background briefings, off-the-record remarks, casual conversations with friendly media, or public pronouncements about the asset freeze may be made without clear written consent from Kensington Palace, according to a tight instruction. Camilla's group was left all alone. Kensington Palace gag orders and High Court injunctions abruptly rendered the media network she had spent 20 years developing ineffective. Her advisors were stuck in frenzied, fruitless meetings, unable to brief the media, announce a denial, or use the media apparatus that had shielded them for decades. Laura Lopes gave up when she faced complete financial and legal devastation. In exchange for the unfreezing of her basic administrative accounts, she signed a formal High Court consent decree, giving up any claim to the black diamond pendant and the sapphire bracelet, and consenting to their permanent transfer into the direct line of succession. She discreetly left the public eye and vanished entirely from the story. Prince William announced the establishment of the Diana Heritage Trust in a formal, measured statement on June 14. The trust's legal structure was intended to be absolute. All of Princess Diana's personal belongings, jewels, and historical items were put into an unbreakable trust that was only intended for Catherine, Princess of Wales, and eventually Princess Charlotte. No private civilian estate, no collateral family line, and no other home could ever come into contact with those things again. William's victory had been utterly disastrous. He had pushed the king to submit, closed the shadow trusts, and retrieved the jewels. However, the High Court forensic team discovered a secret document that completely altered the course of this conflict when they completed their examination of the Highgrove repository. The goal of the High Court audit was to resolve the matter. Rather, it opened a nightmare. The black diamond pendant and the sapphire bracelet were not the only things missing from the original Highgrove vault, according to a confidential forensic dossier that was released from the Ministry of Justice. According to historical documents, the repository formerly included 14 unique, extremely expensive antiques that belonged to Princess Diana. 2 had been retrieved by William's legal team. There were still 12 missing parts. Forensic accountants found a complex, multi-layered offshore business when they followed the paper trail behind the 12 goods. The remaining 12 items were neither in a British bank vault, nor had they been sold at auction. They had been methodically moved via a series of foreign shell companies before ending up within a Delaware-registered private holding company. Delaware's selection was a master lesson in legal avoidance. Beneficial ownership is totally shielded from the British High Court's jurisdiction by Delaware's company privacy rules. Ferrer and colleagues are unable to carry out search warrants or freeze such offshore organizations since a London-issued Mariva injunction has no legal weight against a Delaware shell corporation. The Ministry of Justice file that was released revealed a particularly unsettling internal classification code associated with the offshore paper trail known as the Montecito Connection. The top echelons of Kensington Palace were immediately rocked by the allegation. Camilla's circle in London was not mentioned in the paper trail. It gestured to the exiled royal group living in California on the other side of the Atlantic. It implied that although Camilla's circle had managed to hold on to 2 pieces locally, the remaining 12 things had been covertly secured by a far more advanced international operation, which locked them away in American offshore structures that the British monarchy could never access. In order to preserve portions of Diana's legacy beyond the purview of the formal royal estate, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have both the personal drive and the international legal access. The Montecito Group has ultimate, unassailable control over the future of the royal family's historical legacy by keeping those 12 valuable treasures within a Delaware private company. To preserve his mother's memory, Prince William had created an unbreakable trust, challenged his father, paralyzed his stepmother's family, and deployed the whole might of the British court system. He had ensured the future, imposed total control over the resources of the crown, and demonstrated to the world that he is in complete control of the monarchy. 12 parts of his mother's personal inheritance are still hidden in an offshore vault across the ocean, controlled by a group that is just as familiar with the legal system as he is, even though he is the absolute power behind the throne. The struggle for Princess Diana's last legacy has only begun, but the struggle for the internal authority of the British royal family may have ended.